Wind slammed against the swinging saloon doors, so hard the lanterns inside flickered, throwing jittery shadows across the floorboards. Cards froze mid-air as a gust tore through the room, scattering dust like a warning. Someone at the back muttered, "Riders on the ridge again," but no one moved to the window to check. They could already hear it, the low, rolling tremor of hooves crossing dry earth. The sound grew louder, and then she stepped through the door, a dark silhouette against the storm-lit street, coat trailing behind her like a torn banner, hat pulled low enough to hide everything but the sharp glint of her eyes. She didn't speak. She didn't nod. She just crossed the creaking floorboards with slow, precise steps, every boot fall steady as if she'd counted them in advance. Mara Ellsworth, back in Dustwater Crossing for the first time in 3 long, silent years. Conversation collapsed to whispers. Chairs scraped lightly as people inched away, giving her space without meaning to. The old piano by the wall groaned as the wind shoved its warped keys. The smell of dry timber and fear filled the room. Outside, the hoofbeats faded somewhere behind the canyon walls. Inside, a different kind of quiet settled, the kind that presses against the ribs. Mara stopped at a corner table. A single lantern hung above it, swinging gently, making the shadows pulse across her face. She set down her saddlebag with a dull thump and eased herself into the chair without removing her hat. Her hand drifted to the cloth-wrapped bundle she carried, small, careful, and kept close. The bartender swallowed hard and walked over, wiping his hands on his apron twice before speaking. Didn't expect to see you again," he said, voice thin as a crack in glass. Mara didn't look up. "I know." Her voice was low, steady, almost too calm for a night like this. A woman by the stove whispered to her husband, "She came back on the wrong night." The husband shook his head quickly, eyes fixed on the swinging lantern. Nobody wanted to speak too loud. Not tonight. Not with riders out there. The saloon's front window rattled as a gust slammed into it. Dust spiraled across the floor, twirling like a dying snake before settling around Mara's boots. A boy burst in through the side door, breathless, cheeks streaked with sand. "They're coming down the ridge, burning torches. Not waiting till dawn." The room froze, every face turning to him, all except Mara's. She lifted her chin just enough to look toward the door, eyes narrowing, expression unreadable beneath the brim of her hat. "What did you see?" the bartender asked. The boy gulped. "Ash Creek riders, all of them." A murmur of dread swept the saloon. Someone's glass slipped and shattered. Another person whispered a prayer under their breath. Mara's hand drifted back to the cloth bundle on her table, fingers brushing it with the familiarity of an old habit she'd sworn never to touch again. Outside, the hoofbeats returned, louder this time, and the old storyteller's voice seemed to echo through the tense silence. The lantern by the saloon door shattered first. Glass burst across the floorboards as the wind punched through the gaps in the walls, carrying voices, frantic, overlapping, rising like a storm about to swallow the whole town. "Board the windows. Get the children to the cellar, now." "We don't have time, move." Boots hammered across the saloon, chairs knocked aside, the piano whining as someone stumbled against it. The tension in the room wasn't creeping anymore. It was clawing at every breath. Mara Ellsworth didn't move. She sat at the corner table, hands still resting near the cloth-wrapped bundle, eyes fixed on the front door as if she could see straight through it. A pair of trembling hands grabbed her shoulder. "Mara, please, come with us," the woman by the stove begged, breath shaking. "They'll kill anyone left in the open." Mara didn't answer. Another man stepped in, face pale, rifle half-loaded. "You've lost enough already. Don't stay for whatever this is." Still nothing, only the steady lift of her chest, the tiny tilt of her head toward the rising thunder outside, the way her fingers drifted toward the table as if they were remembering something they weren't supposed to. The saloon side door slammed open again. The scout who'd run earlier burst in, coughing hard, dust plaster across his hair. "They ain't waiting till dawn," he gasped. "They're riding straight from Main Street, torches high." People panicked at once, voices splintering like breaking wood. "We're dead. We can't fight them. Where the hell's the deputy? He ran. He ran last night. The room shook with fear. Mara finally rose. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough for her chair to scrape a single hard line across the floor. "Where are you going?" the bartender asked, stepping in front of her before he could stop himself. His hand shook so hard the rag nearly slipped from his fingers. She looked at him, calm, unreadable, almost detached, then walked past without answering. He followed her with a desperate whisper, "Mara, this ain't your burden anymore." But she didn't stop. She crossed the room toward an old wooden bench against the far wall. The wind howled against the saloon again, louder now, dust blowing through the cracks in sharp, stinging gusts. Mara reached the bench. The bartender hurried after her, voice shaking. "Mara, listen to me. Sit still a while." He swallowed, eyes flicking to the floor, voice dropping lower. "Please, I got something you need to know." She didn't question it. She lowered herself onto the bench, boots planted firm, hands still steady despite everything rumbling outside. The wooden seat creaked beneath her weight, a hollow, unfamiliar sound, but she didn't look down. She kept her eyes on the door. The scout leaned close to the bartender. "Why'd you make her sit?" The bartender wiped his palms on his apron again, breath shuddering. "'Cause she don't know what's under her," he whispered. Outside, the hoofbeats swelled, torches lighting up the night like burning stars. And inside, Mara Ellsworth sat in the shadows, still, silent, refusing to run from the storm riding straight for her. The first torch slammed against the saloon's front wall with a hiss, flames licking up the boards as the hoofbeats thundered past the windows. Shadows of riders swept across the glass like ghostly vultures circling prey. "Open up!" Voices roared outside, hard and hungry. The saloon's double doors rattled as a boot struck them. Dust sifted from the ceiling. Someone screamed. Someone else prayed. The tension in the room stretched thin as rawhide. Mara Ellsworth didn't flinch. She stayed on the wooden bench, shoulders square, hands resting on her knees, breath level. The lantern overhead shook so violently its light danced across her face in erratic flashes. "Stay sitting, Mara," the bartender whispered, kneeling beside her. "Trust me, just a little longer." Before she could answer, the doors exploded inward. The Ash Creek riders poured through the broken entrance, torches and guns raised, boots slamming across the floor. Smoke rolled in with them, curling through the beams like a warning too late to matter. Calder Black stepped forward, coat dragging like a shadow behind him. His grin cut across his face when he spotted Mara. "Well now," he rasped, "a widow sitting pretty while the rest of them quake in their boots." Mara lifted her eyes to him, calm as a still pond. Calder tilted his head. "Ain't you gonna run, sweetheart?" His men laughed, rifles clacking as they fanned out across the saloon. The wind punched through the room again, slamming the shutters so hard the whole saloon seemed to shudder. Mara shifted her weight slightly on the bench. Thump! A hollow sound. The bartender went pale. Calder's grin widened. "What you sitting on there? Something worth my time?" Mara didn't answer, but she felt it now, the faint give beneath her, the dull echo that wasn't wood on wood. Something wrapped, something hidden, something heavy. Her hand moved slowly toward the seat. "No, wait," the bartender hissed. "Mara, let me." But she was already lifting the wooden plank. Dust billowed up as the hidden compartment appeared. And inside it, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a long, slender shape she knew even before she touched it. Her breath caught. She pulled the bundle out and peeled back the cloth. A glimmer of polished steel flashed beneath the lantern light. Unmistakable. A custom-built long-range Sharps rifle. Her husband Jonah's rifle. The one he never let out of his sight. Gasps rippled through the saloon. The bartender wiped his shaking hands on his apron again. "We kept it safe. Jonah said you'd know what to do with it. If hell ever came knocking." Calder barked out a laugh. "That old thing? Think that'll save you?" Mara stood, slowly, deliberately, rifle in hand. Her posture changed, shoulders settling, breath steadying, eyes sharpening with a precision that cut through the smoke-filled room. Calder's grin faltered. The riders shifted uneasily. The old storyteller's voice might as well have echoed right there among the dust. It was then they finally saw her. Not a widow, but the legend she'd buried. Mara thumbed the rifle's hammer back with a click that sliced through the chaos like the first note of a funeral hymn. Outside, the torches roared. Inside, the riders froze. Mara Ellsworth raised the rifle. The first gunshot cracked through the saloon like lightning splitting a tree. Calder Black staggered backward, torch dropping from his hand and rolling across the floor in a hiss of sparks. His men froze, eyes wide, as Mara Ellsworth lowered the rifle just enough to show she had every intention of firing again. Smoke curled around her like a dark veil. Lantern light flickered across her face, sharp and unwavering. "Get her!" one of the riders shouted. They rushed her at once. Mara moved before the nearest man, lifted his gun, shifting her stance, rifle but firm against her shoulder, breath smooth as river glass. She fired. Another rider dropped hard, skidding across the boards. The saloon erupted. Chairs toppled. Torches clattered. Muzzles sparked fire through the smoke. The air filled with the metallic bite of gunpowder and the tremble of roof beams shaking under the force of it all. Mara didn't blink. Every shot she took landed. Every pull of the trigger was deliberate. Every motion was practiced, muscle memory roaring back to life. A rider lunged from her left. She pivoted, slammed her shoulder into him, and sent him crashing through a table. Another took aim near the bar. Mara swung the rifle fast, fired once, and a man's gun flew from his hand as he crashed backward into the shelves of bottles. The townsfolk stared through cracks in the overturned tables, unable to believe what they were watching. The quiet widow cutting through the Ash Creek riders like a force of nature. Calder, clutching his grazed arm, stumbled toward the saloon doors. He snarled through gritted teeth, "Finish her!" But no one dared step at her line again. Mara followed him, boots steady, rifle still smoking. She pushed through the broken doors into the open street, just as a gust of wind sent dust swirling around them like a rising curtain. Calder spun, drawing fast. She drew faster. Her shot struck first, the sound sharp enough to silence the whole town. Calder's pistol clattered to the ground, his knees buckling as he fell into the swirling dust. The storm quieted. The torches guttered. For a long moment, Dustwater Crossing stood still as stone. Mara lowered the rifle. Her arms trembled only once, a final tremor of grief passing through her, before settling into stillness. She stepped toward Calder, knelt beside him, and gently closed his eyes. The townsfolk emerged slowly from the saloon, stepping around debris, staring at her as though seeing her for the first time. The bartender approached, voice soft. "Mara, you saved us." She didn't answer. Instead, she ran her hand along the rifle barrel, wiping away soot and settling her palm where Jonah once held it. "Rest easy now," she whispered. "We're even." The dawn crept over the rooftops, painting her silhouette in golden light. The old storyteller's voice echoed in the quiet. Some say she rode off at sunrise and never looked back. Others swear her shadow still watches Dustwater from the ridge. But one thing they all agree on: the widow who couldn't miss saved the town simply by sitting still until it was time to stand.